I think competition is great. I think competition breeds innovation, makes the whole landscape better. So I welcome competition. I think it's our responsibility to find a way to differentiate and offer something that makes us stand out from our competitors.
Hey, this is Jesse here, and you're about to hear my discussion with Jack Andrews and Justin Phan from Unabated, which is the tools and resources you need to become a winning sports bettor. We first welcomed Unabated onto the podcast almost 3 years ago, so in this episode, we get the full update on their journey going from startup to scale up. We covered a wide range of topics, including the biggest surprise to Jack as Unabated has grown, the crazy story of serendipity that led Justin to join Unabated a few months ago, why they continue to emphasize authenticity over revenue, their embrace of competition, their renewed commitment to maintaining product velocity, and so much more. This discussion was an excellent window into how Unabated has built itself into one of the category leaders, and I know you'll enjoy this one as much as I did. The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. And if you like what you see, you'll get your first month free. All right, we are back here with episode 137 of the Betting Startups podcast, and I am joined by 2 individuals from a company we had on the podcast back in single-digit episode numbers. Unabated, who joined us back in December of 2021, which feels like an eternity ago, was episode number 6. And as I said, we're now up to 137, so some time has elapsed since we've last heard from Unabated. Today, I'm joined by Jack Andrews and Justin Phan. On episode 6, we had Dan Fabrizio, an old friend of mine who is still with the Unabated team, but today we thought we'd mix it up and welcome Jack and Justin into the hot seat. So guys, first and foremost, welcome to the pod. Jack, I saw you and Dan just the other week at G2E in Las Vegas. So just to quickly check in at the starting line here, how was G2E for you guys? And I guess a part B to that, I'm always interested after the conference, kind of from all of the conversations everybody has, trying to distill that down into like a couple key takeaways and sort of a temperature check on where the industry's at. Like, what did you walk out of G2E feeling and thinking sentiment-wise insofar as where the industry's at?
It's always interesting when you go to G2E, you compare it to the past G2Es you've been to, right? And it's definitely morphing. Every year it changes just slightly. The presence of sports betting is decreasing. The presence this year was slots and slot games. I thought they were on the rise. There was definitely a lot more attention to that. And for the most part, though, G2E is always all about somebody's trying to sell you something. Everywhere you turn, there's somebody that wants to talk to you, but they only want to talk to you to sell themselves or their product. It is a hard conference to do solid networking at because everyone's just in sales mode.
Yeah, interesting. Justin, I know you weren't there, so we'll come back to you in a second here. But just to sort of tie this one off, from my perspective, never before have I seen so many new faces and new names on the badges at G2E. And it was great, right? I love the fact there is a lot of new energy, new ideas. The corollary to that, in my opinion, is there's a lot of people coming in with ideas that have been tried before. And for people like yourselves and myself that have been around for a minute or two here, right, we've seen attempts at some things that people are coming into the space trying to reattempt. And it's interesting. One conversation I had at the conference with somebody that Jack, both you and I know very well, a common friend of ours, likened it to there being a lot of tourists in the industry right now, right? People that are coming in, seeing opportunity and may well be on their way out by this time next year. Whether or not that's true, we'll see. But I think, again, just as a key takeaway, a lot of new energy, a lot of new blood, which is great. And obviously wishing everybody, success in finding their lane within the space. But it was an overwhelming conference for me. I've been going to it for 12 years. I think 2011 was my first one. And never before have I been so exhausted after a G2. And this is with me, going to bed at a reasonable hour during the weeknights and generally behaving myself in the desert. So good conference. It was good to see you there, Jack. And again, good to see Dan as well. I'll shout out Dan Fabrizio. Great guy, part of the Unabated team. Let's leave G2E there, though, and talk a bit about you guys and just sort of tee up some intros to get us started today. Justin, why don't we kick it over to you to get us started with the introduction? Give the audience a bit of a sense of who you are, your background in the space, and some of the major chapters prior to your arrival at Unabated just a short couple of months ago.
Yeah, I joined Unabated 2 months ago as the managing director. I started out my career about a decade ago at Fantasy Labs. I was a co-founder there. That was a DFS tools and analytics platform. I then served as the director of analytics for 4 years at Action Network after Action acquired Fantasy Labs. And from there, I joined Underdog Fantasy, where I still currently serve as an advisor and seed investor. So over my career, I've been really involved in a lot of different spaces. I got my start in season-long fantasy at my first start at Basketball Monster, moved on to the DFS space with Fantasy Labs, then the sports betting space with Action Network, Underdog, and now Unabated. So I've kind of seen the whole gamut. I've tried to remain as well-rounded as possible, kind of moving where things are trending before they kind of move that way. And my specialty is really with product, building product, and news particularly. I have a focus on the NBA. That's been my sport in particular, but my job involves managing, NFL, MLB, college football as well. So I've gotten pretty accustomed to the other sports too. So yeah, my passion kind of started out with the NBA and just trying to get a job in sports. But over the course of the last decade, my interest has definitely moved over to the entrepreneurial side, building businesses, startups. That's where I really want to be in. And that space excites me, just going to work every day, being able to make an impact and grow something and put your fingerprint on something and build something that lasts the test of time.
Awesome. And obviously this week we have the NBA regular season tipping off. So we'll come back to that in a few minutes here and talk a bit more about the product initiatives you and the team are working on. But Jack, we'll kick it back over to you. I think most of the audience is familiar with yourself and your work, but just let's entertain the notion that somebody isn't. Give them a quick introduction and a sense of your background and journey in the space.
Sure. I started as a advantage player, as a card counter about 25 years ago. It's amazing that it's been that long ago, but that started my pursuit of always trying to beat the casinos, beat the sports books, and build a successful career as an advantage player. And about 4 years ago this time, I started a little venture with Rufus Peabody, who is, in my opinion, the best sports bettor that's out there today. And it was called the American Bettors Coalition, which was an advocacy group for the bettors. But we were also right up against the pandemic, and we realized funding was going to be very tough. And the sports books were telling us they really wanted no part of this. And so we sort of dissolved that within a year. And that's when we met with Dan Fabrizio and Matt Snyder and some other people. And we got the idea to form Unabated, which is a tools and resources site focused towards the bettors. But really, it's a tide that lifts all boats. It's putting a lot of data science and information out into the industry that I think is for the betterment of both sides of the counter, if you could believe that. I think it's making sports betting a little bit more efficient and also a little bit more beatable at the same time, which is what I learned when I came from card counting is casinos know that blackjack is a beatable game, and they're okay with that to some extent because it encourages people to try and beat them. And most people can't do it because they can't count cards in a disciplined manner. And so as a result, it's one of these things like if you put out sports betting as a beatable product, the world will beat the path to your door because they want to get the edge over something where they feel like they never have an edge. So that was sort of the idea with a lot of Unabated and giving people those resources that could maybe make them a little bit better sports bettor.
I want to stick with you, Jack. And again, just sort of through the lens of, that time, the origin story of Unabated you just talked about there, and for yourself as a co-founder. At the start of every entrepreneurial journey, I'm sure Justin can relate to this from his fantasy lab days, right? You go into a new project with your ideas around what this thing will be and what it will become. And inevitably, once you get going, you get pulled by the market in different directions, which may deviate some degree to the path that you thought you would be going down. And I'm just curious, Jack, your broad reflection so far, whatever it's been 3 to 4 years into the journey. What's that, I guess, matrix of like expectation versus reality for you, right? Like what has gone the way you thought it would? What hasn't? What's come up that's been a surprise? Just give us your broad reflections on, I guess, the road traveled thus far.
It's been a roller coaster. There's definitely been ups and downs. I don't think I anticipated how much the gambling community just doesn't want to pay for things. It's just true. They don't want to be sold things. And when you think about it, you can relate to it because a lot of what you see being sold to gamblers is snake oil. It's touts. It's people that don't have an edge. They're telling you they have an edge if you just trust them and follow them. And it begins this layer of distrust that kind of permeates the entire consumer end of the industry. So it's been hard to sell things to people that you need to convince them that would make them a better sports bettor when everyone else who's ever tried to tell them to sell to them has tried to convince them of the same thing and has failed or had mediocre results. On the plus side, there's a vast community of sports bettors out there that want to lose less or win more. They're tired of losing. They're tired of putting up what they feel is decent money in sports like the NFL and just getting shredded because they don't know how they should be betting. They don't know the dangers of a same game parlay. They don't know what the house edge is, and they don't know how much a half point is worth. All these things that they'll probably never find out on their own. It's just not something that they want to put the time investment into. And they've come to Unabated because they trust our authenticity between Rufus's data science, between my education on the art of sports betting, and they've become very good sports bettors. In many cases, they've changed their life position because this side hustle has turned into something that pays them more than their day job, and it's really changed their lives. So that's been something that I really didn't see, that we would be changing lives when we started Unabated. But I also didn't see that it would be so tough to convince people that we're authentic.
I want to stick with you, Jack. There's a couple threads I want to pull on there, if I may. The first one with respect to all of the amazing content you produce that is very educationally focused. I have a lot of conversations just around, the quote unquote, the American bettor, right? And there's a lot of opinions around whether people are willing to put in that work, right? Do the hard yards to become educated, following great content like yours and just putting the time in and getting the reps in to really, develop advantages in their betting. And what I'm curious to hear from you, and again, just sort of given the 3 to 4 years with Unabated, what is your broad assessment of the American bettor, right? Like, do you see and observe sort of a dynamic whereby people just want to be spoon-fed the answers, right? Some percentage of the people just want the answers. We know this, but do people, generally speaking, want to become better bettors and really put in those hard yards, as I say, to develop themselves and lose less over the long run?
Jesse, I think it really actually breaks down in cultural generations. We're seeing now that the millennial generation likes the side hustles. They like I'm going to make money this way, I'm going to make money this way, I'm going to drive for Uber, I'm going to try to pick off edges in sports betting, and they just got all these little side hustles going on. And when one of them closes up on them, they move on to something else. So the millennial generation has been great for Unabated and great for acquiring new customers, but at the same time, the retention of the millennials is much tougher. They're ready to, if they get limited on all their accounts, they're out of here. They're moving on to the next thing. Now you go with the Generation X, Generation Y, and you get a lot more people who are willing to put more effort into it. So while the millennial generation kind of wants the answers, they want the answers quick, they want the side hustle and get on with it, the Generation X, Generation Y are often willing to, okay, I'm willing to put in the study. I'm willing to do what it takes to learn this skill or this trade. And they are much more loyal customers. The baby boomer generation is a little bit different because they've had sports betting for longer. Remember, sports betting is new in the legalized sense in the US, but it's not new to any of us. We've been betting all our lives in various ways. And the boomer generation tends to say, well, I've been doing it this way. I'm going to give this a try. But they often find that sometimes this is a little more complex than they want to be pursuing. So in terms of how the customer has kind of come to Unabated, yes, we do have some that want to be spoon-fed answers. And we do have various products that do, much to my chagrin, do spoon-feed some answers. I'm one of those people. I'm Generation X. I'm willing to put in the hard work. I did 25 years of being an Advantage player. I'm willing to try and fail and try and fail and get to where I feel that I can be the best person I can be in terms of sports betting. And luckily, we have a lot of users that have kind of come along that same mindset, and they turn out to be our most loyal users.
Interesting. And then another thing you said a few minutes ago, I just want to quickly circle back on, is the fact that it is difficult, frankly, to get people to part with their dollars to pay for something, right? And this isn't something that's exclusive to Unabated. It's a phenomenon, with any subscription-based digital product, really. But I reflect back on that episode 3 years ago with Dan. I actually listened to that episode on my bike ride into the office this morning to kind of look back on where Unabated was at the time. And Dan was talking, at that time about the fact that the business model would be solely subscription based, right? And I know for him in his previous chapter at Sports Insights, that was really the business model he hitched to. And I think subscription based business models really philosophically aligned with you guys as the founding team, right? For yourself, for Rufus, for Dan. And really what I'm saying between the lines here is you guys have more or less rejected the affiliate revenue model, right? And look, we all know of all these companies out there now that are doing everything they can to drive top of funnel traffic to sportsbooks and monetizing through CPA deals. A lot of them have tools, directionally similar to those that Unabated has in market and, are somewhat competitors, but they're also layering on that affiliate revenue model in addition to the subscription-based revenue model. Yet, at least to my understanding, please do correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have really stuck purely to that subscription-based business model. So I guess, Jack, what I'm curious to get your reflections on here is, how's that conversation maybe evolved or shifted over the years, if at all, amongst the founding team as the business has grown and as you guys have had challenges, having people part with their hard-earned dollars to pay for a subscription?
Yeah, no, Jesse, that's a valid point. We started out, our cornerstone was always going to be authenticity. Rufus Peabody, world-renowned as one of the best sports bettors. Captain Jack, I don't know if I'm world-renowned, but at least I'm known as a very strong advantage player. We knew that if we're building on the cornerstone of authenticity, you need to make sure that everything you say is completely unimpeachable. And if we're in a situation where a member or a potential user would say, well, yeah, but they got this affiliate link, and are they really sending me to this sports book because they believe it's a good sports book or because they're getting the biggest kickback from that sports book? And when you view it through the lens of authenticity, you realize that you can't play favorites and have an affiliate model at the same time. People are going to have that seed of doubt. And authenticity is all about the perception of authenticity. I can be as authentic as I want to be, but unless I'm perceived as being authentic, it's useless, right? So that's why we always stuck with no affiliate model. Now, there are sports books out there that I genuinely like. They're treating the players fairly. They're taking all kind of bets. For instance, the exchanges have no choice but to be fair. There's really not a way they could be unfair. And so, yeah, I would gladly endorse an exchange, but at the same time, we made this model of subscription-based, not affiliate-based, and we've stuck with it because I feel it is the best thing to show our authenticity as a company.
Awesome. Well, again, I have to really respect that. I can only imagine that it is tempting purely from a commercial perspective to look at that. Yet, as you say, preserving that authenticity, I think is really one of the core value propositions of Unabated. And certainly from the outside looking in, that's what I associate with the brand, is that authenticity that you and Rufus and the team bring to it. So Justin, let's pull you in at this point here. As you mentioned, you've joined the team just, a short number of months ago. I'd love to just hear from you to start with here. What compelled you to join Unabated, right? I mean, this is the Betting Startups podcast. 3 years ago when Dan was on, it was a startup. It's very much a growth stage company now. And with yourself, I have to reasonably assume you have lots of optionality insofar as how you could be spending your time, yet you've chosen to join Unabated at this stage of its journey. What is exciting to you about the stage of the company, the trajectory it's on, and ultimately, what compelled you to align with the team and, focus on this as your next chapter?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me when assessing any opportunity is the people that are involved. And it starts with the people. And I have worked with 5 of the members of the executive team in the past between Fantasy Labs and Action Network. So during my time with those people, you learn 2 things. You learn, first of all, character. You really get to see what someone is about when you hit adversity. And we faced quite a bit of that at Fantasy Labs. This was during the period of time when there was accusations of insider trading. We were worried about, will DFS be legal in 6 months, a year's time? It was a very turbulent time, and you get to see what people are really made of and what people are really about, their principles when things get tough. And the second thing is track record. I think when you want to start a company, it's easy to kind of bring in talented people, but the skill set required on the business side is very different. And sometimes those issues really come out when you're trying to scale a company from, let's say, 20 million to 100 million. It's a totally different skill set. So having been through the fire with a lot of these guys before and scaling Fantasy Labs to acquisition, I was confident that we would be able to do it again. The second thing for me is vision. I share the same vision as all the executive team. We're very ambitious, we're optimistic, and we believe in a very fast and high product velocity. We all come from that background. We want to be able to leverage data, information to create the best tools and product in the market to actually help and educate bettors long term and make it more sustainable. What Jack talked about this a little bit before, but the sports betting space is just infiltrated, and there's touts all over the place looking to make a quick buck and sell you picks. We are very steadfast in the opposite end of the spectrum, and we want to create something that has lasting value, that in 3, 4, 5 years time, you'll be able to still see Unabated there and thriving and be a place that you can trust, that has your best interest in mind, and that is creating things for the future. So that's very much the vision that we bought into. And, from the start, I mean, this thing happened really fast. I can kind of get it a little bit into the origin story, but I was looking at other opportunities and pretty close to signing with another company. I was in Nashville at the time with some buddies. I was looking to get a haircut and, looked up a barbershop close to our Airbnb. There happened to be one time slot left. It was 11 a.m. Walked in the barbershop, sat down. Next to me was Cal Spears, who was the founder of Roto Grinders and involved in Gambly, a company that we're involved with as well. So Cal talked to Kevin, who's one of the founders of Unabated, told him about what I was up to. Kevin and I jumped on a Zoom call like a week later, caught up, and Kevin floated the idea of me potentially joining Unabated. And from there, things happen 2-3 weeks, time. And for me, you kind of can feel when the opportunity is right, when the universe is kind of sending you a message that all these things fell into place for this to happen. And for me, it felt like a family reunion, and the family reunion of the best kind, not one that you dread. So they were very serious from the start in terms of investing resources into projections, into news, into product, into my team. So it was very easy for me to get bought in. And in the 2 months I've been here, it's been incredible to see what our team has been able to build in just that time. And, I talked to Matt Snyder, our CEO, yesterday. I was like, just look at the last 2 months, what we were able to accomplish. I want that to be the next 2 months, and the next 2 months after that, then the 2 months after that. So that is our ambition. That is our goal. It's very exciting, I would say, to be a part of a team that has that and shared ambition. And when you go into work every day, being able to really impact things and move the needle is something that is invaluable to me.
Well, that's a crazy story of serendipity, first of all. And shout out to Cal Spears, and shout out to him and what Jonathan Bales are building with Gambly. I say this genuinely, which is for all of the startups I look at and the new products that hit my inbox and my radar, Gambly might be the coolest thing I've seen this year. We've got a couple months left in 2024, but I'm putting it out there as an early contender for coolest new product of this year. So shout out to those guys. As I say, Justin, crazy, story of serendipity there. And as you said, the universe may have put you into that barber seat next to Cal in Nashville. Let's talk about the product velocity you mentioned, right? Sounds like you've come in and really sort of set the pace for product development within Unabated. Can you just talk maybe in general terms about sort of your philosophy around product development and how you guys are looking at where to invest your product resources and how you prioritize those just from a product management, product development perspective?
For sure. I think where it starts is I think you need to be a power user of your product. And where I have the advantage, I started my career in season-long fantasy. I moved to DFS. I moved to sports betting. So I know, and I've been a pretty significant player like day to day in terms of looking for products and looking for tools and resources out in the market. So I feel like that is kind of the foundation. I have a good idea of what the market is kind of looking for. And our goal is to serve the market, serve our users, create products that they're looking for that can make their lives easier, can make them profitable long term. And our strength has always been engineering and data science, and what I came in to do is to leverage those advantages, those resources that we have over our competition and productize it, and I want to make products that kind of lower the barrier of entry for the average bettor, make it accessible, make it so they can come in and use our product, not feel super intimidated, not feel like, they're going to a site with all these data, these numbers, these tools they don't know how to use. Make it simple, digestible, and authentic, and for the mission has always kind of been the same. You focus on creating the best product, bringing genuine value to the people who use it, focus on being authentic, and then the customers will follow. I personally am not out there in the streets doing all this content, doing all this selling, doing all this shilling. I believe that you focus on the product and create tools that are valuable to people, the word will get out. And like Jack said, we're trying to build something long lasting. We're trying to get away from like the instant gratification. So it was an easy task for me, just given the immense tools and what we've already kind of built before I got here, just to take it to the next level and just add my experience and spins to things.
Awesome. And through the first 2 months on the team, Justin, the first thing you're bringing to market is this new NBA tool for the start of the new season. Can you quickly just talk about what it is, what it does, and just the value prop of this particular tool?
Yeah, so it's kind of a culmination of my entire decade in the NBA and creating, from Fantasy Labs to Underdog. This is the most comprehensive product I've ever built. And, it focuses on two things: projections and news and information. So first of all, with news and information, have built Fantasy Labs NBA, Underdog NBA Twitter handles. We want to adapt to where news is going. And news has really changed over the last couple of years, where 3-4 years ago, LeBron James was rolled out. I'd be able to bet the Warriors sides or Anthony Davis overs 30 seconds to a minute after it broke. Now that window is like 5 to 15 seconds before all those things are off the board. So we want to be focusing much more on the buildup to that, so you can get out ahead of the news and get the edge an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours before the news is made finalized. So we're trying to adapt as the news landscape is. With the projections, obviously our goal is to be industry leading in terms of accuracy. We're also introducing something that no one else has, which is conditional projections. So let's say LeBron is questionable. Our users will be able to toggle between Lakers projections with LeBron in and LeBron out. A lot of the content, a lot of the takes right now, what you see in the industry is just general takes. Anthony Davis's usage rates goes up X. This player scores, has an assist bump of X when LeBron's off the court. Nowhere are you actually able to exactly quantify how many points, rebounds, assists, steals his teammates will go up when he is out. And not only that, but compare it to the market as well and figure out where the edges are before the news breaks. So it goes along with the theme of we're trying to get you prepared. Things are finalized to get you to beat the market and not be kind of left behind. So those are the two things we're focused on. We have brought in the team. I mentioned that Unabated was very serious about giving me resources to invest, and feel very strongly and confident about the team we've assembled to be able to execute on this product. So super excited.
Yeah, amazing. And to your point, right, this sounds like something that doesn't exist, right? You're bringing something that, genuinely new into the market. And I want to use that as a springboard to get your guys' quick takes on the betting tool landscape in general, right? Over the last 6 to 12 months, there's been tons of them popping up, let's just say, plus EV tools of varying degrees of quality, some new ARB detection tools, things like this, which are, somewhat generic tools now, I would suggest. I mean, again, varying degrees of quality, but it's a crowded landscape is what I'm getting at. There's a lot of competition. I would suggest Unabated is amongst the leaders in the category. How are you guys sort of viewing, I guess, the competitive landscape right now? And, what do you just sort of make of all these new entrants coming into the space? Bit of a jump ball here for whoever wants to take this one.
I'll just give a general take to hand it off to Jack. I think competition is great. I think competition breeds innovation, makes the whole landscape better. So I welcome competition. I think it's our responsibility to find a way to differentiate and offer something that makes us stand out from our competitors. So for me, I think it's a great thing. Jack, what are your thoughts?
I think we stand out just because we don't have the word odds in our company name. It seems you just take the word odds, you take any word next to it, and that's the name of your company. But no, seriously, it has been a boom of new companies that all are doing odds screeners. They're all doing some kind of, arbing, things like that, positive EV tools. They're usually not built by bettors. And that's one of the things that Unabated has always been kind of like our cornerstone is, Rufus and I shaped what these tools would look like, what the sports bettor needed to know. There's what you think you need to know, and there's what you need to know. And Justin's conditional projections are a perfect example of that. You need to know the projections, yes, but you need to know what the news is going to tell you an hour before game time, before that news hits the market. And that's what you need to know. So yeah, in terms of the competition that's out there, Justin's right. Competition breeds innovation. That's the capitalistic society that we exist in. And we look forward to doing what we can to make our product even more innovative than the competition's. And some of the competition is amazing. I look at some of these tools and I go, how do they do that so fast with graphing on the screen and all these things? I don't do the engineering at Unabated, luckily for us. So we have very talented engineers that I show them, how do they do that so fast? And they quickly have an answer in their head as to what that process could look like. And I go, wow, that's something we could try to achieve as well.
Jack, I want to stick with you with another quick question here and just get your take on this, which is, in addition to the core subscription-based consumer tool, Unabated has also gotten into the B2B data provision business. And I'm just curious, again, a theme for me coming out of G2E, a lot of conversations around data and data costs, data rights, data quality, and all of this. What, I guess, do you see for Unabated as the opportunity getting into this data business? Which again is a pretty crowded landscape, but there is opportunity there to carve out some unique proposition. Just give us a bit of an insight into what led you guys into that B2B side of things.
What led us into B2B was all the Bs that were asking us to do B2B. We were getting requests constantly for APIs and for a way that people could ingest our odds data faster and more efficiently. And so some of the businesses that we've dealt with are on one side of the counter and some of them are on the other side of the counter. What we do is, though, for any B2B data that we sell, we don't sell our intellectual property. So in other words, like all that information from Rufus as to how much a half point is worth in a WNBA total or in a half of a college football game. We don't sell that B2B, but we do sell the data feeds and the information from the data feeds that get out there. And it's been fairly lucrative to us because I think, again, that authenticity shines through. And these other companies say, well, Unabated, they've had a sterling track record so far. I definitely trust if they say this is a real-time feed, this is a real-time feed. If they say this feed is delayed up to 30 seconds, we know that that's the case as well. That's one of the things that we started doing because I was frustrated as a consumer that you had things that were real-time feeds, but they definitely weren't real-time. And so we put red light, yellow light, green light on our feeds so the users can see exactly how fast the lag time is on that feed.
Taking us down to the home stretch here for today, guys. One other thing I want to get quick takes on is just at the operator level, we all know there's a trend towards consolidation right now. A lot of these tier 2 operators, many of which have come over to, the shores of America from Europe, have packed their bags and gone home. It's a tough game out there. Obviously, there's an ever-increasing percentage of market share accumulating and accruing towards DraftKings and FanDuel. Jack, from your perspective, advocating for the bettors out there, the end consumers of all of these products, what does this trend towards consolidation mean for the bettor in practical terms? Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it neutral? Just what's your overall perspective on how to map that from the customer to the operator?
It's definitely not a good thing. The third time we'll say it. Competition breeds innovation. Yeah. Well, the less competition, the less innovation in the market. I think the pressure is now on the regulators. The regulators need to realize, do we want to build something that is a tax cash cow for our state, or do we want to build an industry within our state? And if it's the latter, they need to start to figure out, how do we make this a more level playing field? I saw an article today, which was quoting Alex Kane from Sport Trade saying, states need to consider a second tier of sports betting, a tier that is more open to new companies, innovative companies that don't really want more than 5% of the market share, but at least make that accessible to the market. The barriers to entry in sports betting as a operator are still way too high. That's why we have unregulated sports betting starting to take off. is because the barriers to entry have forced the hand. Some states, the barriers to entry are a complete wall around the state, as Justin can say there in California. They need to realize that people want to bet. And unless you want to regulate it and make it fair for everyone, people are going to find a way to bet that's not the way that you control. So in terms of the consumer, yes, competition is what they need and consolidation is what they don't need. But all of these other ways that people are finding ways to bet, I think there's going to be some regulators that decide it's easier to join them than to fight them and find a way to regulate those companies within their state to make it a better experience for the consumer.
Last one for today, guys. Justin, I'm going to lob this one over to you. Unabated probably approaching its 5-year anniversary now. So for you coming in and sort of setting the course for the next 5 years, in 5 years' time, in your wildest dreams and wildest ambitions, where's Unabated at that time?
Yeah, we're the go-to place for tools and products for bettors who want to become profitable. We'll have maintained our product velocity. We'll have lowered the barrier to becoming a successful and profitable bettor. And most importantly, we'll have stay true to our principles and not strayed from our founding beliefs and missions. So that's kind of where I see it. I think we're on the right track and there's a long way to go. But from the 2 months I've been here, I think we're on the right track.
Awesome. Final thing before we get out of here today, guys, can you quickly plug where people can go to check out Unabated, any of your social handles, get in touch with you guys, anything you want to plug before we bail today?
Sure. Well, unabated.com. No word odds in there whatsoever. Unabated.com. And, if you want to learn more about sports betting, the truth about sports betting, youtube.com/unabated. One thing that I've never done on our YouTube channel is to make them just an infomercial about Unabated. It's about the education. It's about knowing more about sports betting. And that's been a very effective top of funnel for us because that's what people want is they want that more information. And if you want to follow my hot takes on the industry, at CapJack2000 on Twitter, but hopefully people are already familiar with that.
Awesome. Well, we'll drop links in the show notes to those for now, guys. We'll let you get on your way to a busy NBA season ahead here. And I appreciate you stopping by and giving us an update on everything at Unabated over the last 3 years, and excited to continue to follow the story and wishing you guys all the best.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, Jesse.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. And if you like what you see, you'll get your first month free.